Good morning, students. Hope you're all doing well. Now, today we'll try and finish the revision of our chapter 2 till what is coming in your exam. That is till the strategies to improve the agricultural production that was adopted since the 6th century onwards. Okay, moving on. We have seen how Magad became the most powerful of the 16 Mahajanpads, owing to several reasons or factors which helped in attaining this position. But it was during the reign of Mauryan Empire or Mauryan dynasty that Magad attained its zenith, that is, it attained its highest point. But during the Mauryan time, do remember the fact that Magad ceased to be a Mahajanpad but rather became the political center or the nerve center where the capital city of the entire empire was situated, and where obviously the emperor also resided. So the founder of the Mauryan Empire was Chandragupta Maurya, who was able to overthrow the ruling dynasty, which was the Nanda dynasty. He managed to do this with the help of his mentor, who was Kautilya, or also is known as Chanakya. Chandragupta Maurya's son Bindusar was able to maintain this empire and even extend some of its boundary. But it was during the reign of Ashoka, that is Chandragupta Maurya's grandson, that Mauryan Empire achieved its maximum glory. Ashoka did not only conquer Kaling, which had remained unconquerable till date, but he also brought in a lot of changes and reforms within the administration that resulted in him gaining the title Chakravartin Samrat. So during his time, the borders of Mauryan Empire extended from Afghanistan in the northwest to Bangladesh, you can say Bengal area in the east, till Karnataka in the south. Okay, Karnataka was the border of the Mauryan Empire, and below that, what did we have? We had Tamilakam region existing side by side, but it was not directly influenced by the Mauryan Empire. So, what are the various sources by which historians try to reconstruct about the Mauryan Empire? The first one among these are the sculptures that were crafted by the craftsmen of the Mauryan Empire. Now, these represent the artistic achievement which was achieved during that period of time. So, firstly, we have the freestanding sculptures, जिसको हिंदी में मूर्ति बोलते हैं. So, these freestanding sculptures were of the highest order. Okay, the most famous example of this is the Yakshi or Yakshini of Didarganj. Then you have the animal capital, that is the sculptures of animal crafted in order to crown over a pillar or a rock edict. The most famous example of this is the lion capital of Sarnath, which is adopted as the national emblem of India. Then you have the inscriptions which were issued by Ashoka in the form of rock or pillar edicts. It was basically through these inscriptions that Ashoka could convey message to all his subjects. Now do remember the fact that Ashoka was the first emperor in the Indian subcontinent to do so. That is, employing the method of using inscriptions to reach out his subjects. Then you have textual source such as Arthashastra, which was written by Kautilya or Chanakya, who was the mentor of Chandragupta Maurya. Then you have the Indica, written by Megasthenes, who was a Greek ambassador to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. Okay, so these two works are very important to understand about the Mauryan Empire. Then finally you have the textual sources again, but these are produced much later on. So these include the Buddhist text, the text produced by Jain literature, And finally, the Puranic literature, which do speak about Mauryan dynasty in detail. How was it possible for such a vast empire to hold itself together? This was done by three things. The first one was the administrative setup or the political setup of the entire empire. Then you had the transport and communication which binded the empire together. And finally, Ashoka's Dhamma, which held its people together. So we'll look into all these three things one by one. So regarding the political setup of the empire, you had one capital city and four provincial centers, each situated at a strategic place. The capital city, we all know it, was Patliputra, and the four provincial cities were Takshila, Ujjaini, Suvarnagiri, and Toshali. So the capital city was where the king resided and all power was centralized in him. Remember, Mauryan administration was highly centralized, whereas it was in the provincial cities that the various Kumars, or you can say the princes, were stationed in order to carry out the functioning of these provinces in an efficient manner, but report back to the king when and however he was required to do so, whenever he was called by the king. Now, one thing we do need to keep in mind is that the Mauryan administration or the control would not have been uniform throughout this empire. What historians do conclude is that this control would have been maximum near the core areas, that is, areas surrounding the capitals or the provincial centers, and the control would have been weaker around the periphery of the empire. So what is the concluding statement? That the administration all throughout the empire was not uniform. Transport and communication. Okay, so the entire Mauryan Empire was connected, the provinces were connected to the capital, or the periphery part was connected to the provinces. This was done either by the roads, or which is the land routes, or by the riverine routes, that is by harnessing the power of Ganga and its tributaries for navigation purpose. So who were the people who were traveling along these roads? Obviously these were the travelers. Then you had people who had to carry out trade and commerce activities. Then you had the army moving along these roads whenever it was necessary. So the most famous example of road built during the time of Maurya is that of the Grand Trunk Road, commissioned by Chandragupta Maurya. It connected the eastern half of the empire, that is the Bengal region, till the northwestern part, okay, northwestern extreme, that is till Takshila. So this was called the Grand Trunk Road, and it holds quite a significant place in the Indian history. Now coming to the work of army, see that time, remember, you don't have policing as such. You had army which takes care not only of fighting battles across the borders, not only securing its frontiers, but it also takes care of the fact that the smooth functioning of administration is taking place. They were protecting not only the emperor but the princes or the governors. Then they were basically protecting the empire from breaking up. So with the varied task of the army, it was very important and efficient that the army would be divided into committees, and each committee would look after one specific task of the army. So there are 6 such committees mentioned in your book. Please make a list of it and memorize them. They are very important from the point of view of your exam. Next, what is Ashoka's Dhamma? Okay, so Ashoka's Dhamma was a form of code of conduct which Ashoka expected that his subjects, whom he treated as his children, would follow. So this code of conduct or Dhamma had a universal application. Okay, it was not a religion, but its principles were such that it would ensure harmony within the entire empire. So Ashoka managed to get the messages of Dhamma inscribed on his rock or pillar edicts so that the message is reached to a vast number of people. He even appointed special officers known as Dhamma Mahamatas who would elaborate on these principles of Dhamma and explain it to the subjects of the empire. Do keep in mind that we don't know about the literacy during the Mauryan period, so just assume that all of them would not have been literate. That is, a majority portion of them would not have been literate. So they needed someone to read this and explain it to them. That is why these officers were appointed. Let us now look into the fact how important was the Mauryan Empire when you consider the fact that it ruled only for 150 years in this vast span of time. Okay, so it did not last for long, but did it manage to make an impact? We'll look into that. Firstly, let us look into some of its achievements. The first one being the impact that the discovery of Mauryan Empire had on the psyche of the historians and scholars and for people as general. Okay, so it presented a possibility which was both challenging and exciting for these scholars. Then the sophistication in art and architecture achieved by Mauryas, whether it was in the sculptures or it was in the cave architecture, it marked a level of brilliance which was previously not seen. Then Mauryan Empire, especially Ashoka, is credited with spreading of Buddhism outside the Indian subcontinent. And once the discovery was made about Ashoka and the kind of personality he embodied, in spite of being such a big conqueror, such a great emperor, he managed to be humble at the same time. So he proved to be a great role model for the nationalist leaders or the people who were carrying out the Indian national movement at that time. We finally got our own Indian heroic figure. But in spite of all these achievements, there are certain shortcomings. What are they? First one, this empire did not last for a very long time. We have already stated that it just lasted for 150 years, owing to its weak successors and obviously Ashoka's pacifist policy, which he followed later on in life after he underwent a transformation during the Battle of Kalinga. Then, technically speaking, it did not encompass the entire subcontinent. Why? It was the southern tip or the Tamilakam region which remained outside its influence. Then you have the control of the Mauryan administration was not uniform throughout the empire. It was stronger nearer the core areas and it was weaker in the periphery. And finally, the collapse of Mauryan Empire led to establishment of new kingdoms or new dynasties which ruled the Indian subcontinent for years to come.